Forget what the documentaries told you. World War II wasn't a story of perfect soldiers and flawless weapons. It was a war of mud, fear, and ingenuity, fought with rifles that jammed, machine guns that overheated, and inventions born from desperation. These were the real infantry guns of World War II, rough, heavy, and forged to survive the unthinkable. Every dent, every scratch, every click of a trigger helped decide the fate of nations. Today, we're counting 15 weapons that didn't just arm soldiers. They changed the course of history itself. No glorified tales, no patriotic filters. Just the truth, the raw mechanics of how the Second World War was actually fought. So shoulder your rifle, steady your breath, and meet the weapon that rewrote modern warfare forever. Number 15, Piat, the tank killer that could kill you back. Introduced in 1942, the Piat began as a brutal solution to a simple problem. How do you stop a tank when you're just a man on foot? It wasn't a rocket or a mortar. It was a spigot-driven brute, launching a shaped charge that could burn through armor. The idea was to give ordinary infantry the power to destroy tanks without artillery or crews. A heavy spring fired the bomb, and that same recoil recocked the weapon for another shot. On paper, it was genius. In practice, it was terrifying. Soldiers in Italy, Normandy, and across Europe carried the Piat into cellars, hedgerows, and alleyways, any place a tank might crawl too close. It could stop armor dead at point-blank range. But it demanded brute strength to cock, kicked like a mule, and misfired often enough to make even veterans flinch. Still, it changed infantry warfare. For the first time, small squads could hunt tanks without waiting for reinforcements. It gave courage and danger in equal measure. After the war, sleeker rocket launchers took its place, but for one brutal chapter of World War II, the Piat gave the common soldier a fighting chance against steel giants. It could kill a tank, and if you weren't careful, it could kill the man who fired it first. Number 14, M1 Carbine, the rifle that redefined mobility. When the U.S. Army called for a lightweight rifle in 1940, they didn't want power, they wanted freedom. The standard M1 Garand was heavy, nearly 10 pounds loaded. Soldiers weren't the only ones under fire. Radio men, engineers, officers, men who carried equipment instead of rifles, needed something faster, lighter, and easier to shoulder in a split second. The result was the M1 Carbine, a rifle that looked almost like a toy, but carried a serious bite. At just 5 pounds, it could be slung over a shoulder, fired from the hip, or drawn like a pistol in a hallway. It fired the smaller .30 carbine cartridge, not powerful enough to pierce heavy cover, but fast and controllable in tight quarters. To American troops landing in Italy, France, and the Pacific, it became the weapon of movement. Paratroopers dropped with it. Tank crews trusted it. Officers loved it. It turned every man behind the lines into a potential rifleman. There were flaws, weak range, unreliable stopping power, but the carbine wasn't made for long-range duels. It was made for the chaos between the lines, and there it excelled. By the war's end, over 6 million had been built, more than any other U.S. small arm of the conflict. It was the rifle that proved mobility could win battles as surely as firepower. Half a rifle in size, but twice the freedom in a soldier's hands. Number 13, Bren gun, the backbone of the British infantry. Before World War II began, the British Army knew one thing for certain. A rifle platoon was only as strong as its automatic weapon. The Bren gun was their answer. Born from a Czech design and refined in Enfield, it gave British and Commonwealth troops something rare in the 1930s, a light machine gun that was accurate, reliable, and simple to maintain in the mud. It fired the standard .303 cartridge from a curved top-mounted magazine. One man carried it, another fed the ammunition, and together they laid down fire precise enough to pick targets, or heavy enough to pin a squad. Its slow, deliberate rhythm, made it instantly recognizable, steady, methodical, and controlled. On every front, from the desert dunes of El Alamein to the ruins of Arnhem, the Bren became the sound of the British line. When the gunner went down, someone else picked it up. It wasn't glamorous and it didn't change headlines, but it made the rest of the platoon possible. The Bren gun didn't just serve through the war. It stayed in service for decades after, adapted to new calibers and new battles. Even as automatics evolved, soldiers still trusted the Bren's balance, its smooth recoil, its dependability under pressure. In a war of innovation and excess, the Bren proved something simple. Accuracy and reliability outlast everything. It wasn't a symbol, it was a backbone. Number 12, FG-42, the paratrooper's rifle from the future. In 1942, Germany's airborne troops had a problem. They could jump from the sky, but their weapons couldn't. Paratroopers landed with pistols and submachine guns, while their rifles and machine guns dropped separately in crates. By the time they reached them, the fight had often already begun. The solution was as daring as it was ambitious, a single weapon that could do it all. The FG-42 was born. Slim, automatic, and terrifyingly advanced for its time, it combined the precision of a rifle with the firepower of a light machine gun. It fired the full-power 7.92mm cartridge fed by a side-mounted magazine and could fire semi or full auto at the flick of a switch. In the hands of a trained paratrooper, it was devastating, capable of cutting through an ambush before the enemy even realized what hit them. But innovation came at a price. The FG-42 was complex to build, expensive to produce, and brutal on recoil. Only a few thousand ever reached the field. Yet its influence didn't end there. Its layout, pistol grip, inline stock, side magazine, became the blueprint for post-war designs on both sides of the Iron Curtain. American engineers studied it while developing the M60. The Soviets borrowed from its ergonomics for their next generation of small arms. The FG-42 was a glimpse of the future, a weapon decades ahead of its time, born from a need that few armies could even imagine. It was the paratrooper's dream and the quartermaster's nightmare. Number 11, Sten Mach 2, the gun that armed a continent. When Britain stood alone in 1941, it faced an impossible math problem. Too few guns, too many enemies. The submachine guns in service were costly and slow to make. The Americans had the Thompson, but it was heavy and expensive. The British needed something crude, fast, and cheap enough to build by the thousands. The answer came from a pair of engineers, Shepard and Turpin, who designed a weapon that looked more like plumbing than firepower. It had no wood, no polish, barely any parts at all, just a steel tube, a simple bolt, and a side-mounted magazine. The Sten could be made in small factories and bicycle shops by workers with no gunsmith training. It fired the same 9mm rounds as German submachine guns. A lucky coincidence that meant captured ammo could be reused. For troops on the front and for resistance fighters across occupied Europe, it was a miracle of simplicity. A Sten could be smuggled, hidden, even dropped by parachute in pieces and reassembled in minutes. But the simplicity had a cost. It could jam, misfire, or go off if dropped. Its rough edges earned it a reputation as dangerous to friend and foe alike. Still, it worked, and it was everywhere. From British paratroopers at Arnhem to French partisans in the shadows of Paris, the Sten gave ordinary people a fighting chance. It was ugly, it was unreliable, and it was the weapon of defiance. The Sten didn't win battles through precision, it won them through numbers. It was the gun that armed a continent when the world ran out of time. Number 10. Number 10. Thompson M1A1, the legend that went to war. Before it became a symbol of the American soldier, the Thompson had already earned a reputation, and not a gentle one. In the 1920s, it was the gangster's gun, a roaring, steel contraption spraying .45 caliber rounds through smoke and chaos. Police feared it. Politicians tried to ban it. But when the world went to war again, that same fearsome reputation suddenly became an asset. The U.S. military needed a compact weapon with the power of a pistol and the range of a rifle. The Thompson fit the bill, and this time it went to work for the law instead of against it. In North Africa, Sicily, and Normandy, the Thompson M1A1 became a favorite of sergeants, commandos, and paratroopers alike. It hit hard, fired smooth, and could be trusted to work when mud and rain choked everything else. It wasn't light, more than 10 pounds loaded, but its punch made up for it. Soldiers loved its stopping power, its rhythm, and its sheer authority in close combat. To the enemy, the sound of a Thompson burst was unmistakable. To the men who carried it, it was reassurance, the kind of reliability that could calm a shaking hand in a firefight. After the war, the Thompson's myth only grew. Hollywood turned it into a symbol of American grit, but its real story was far less glamorous. A tool of necessity, heavy and imperfect, but trusted in the worst moments of war. It began as the gangster's gun. It ended as the soldier's legend. Before we move on, which of the guns so far would you want by your side if you were dropped into 1944? The quick-draw Sten, the thunderous Thompson, or the tank-killing Piat? Tell me your pick down below. I'm curious how you'd survive the front lines. Number 9. Panzerfaust, the one-shot tank killer. By 1943, German infantry were running out of answers. The Soviet T-34 and Allied Shermans rolled through Europe faster than anti-tank guns could be moved. What they needed was a weapon any soldier could carry and fire once before disappearing into the smoke. That weapon was the Panzerfaust, a single-use disposable launcher that turned a foot soldier into a tank hunter. It fired a shape-charged warhead large enough to punch through almost any Allied armor, yet was so simple that a conscript could learn it in minutes. Cheap to make, easy to use, and devastating up close, the Panzerfaust flooded the front lines. From the ruins of Warsaw to the forests of the Ardennes, German troops waited in silence until the enemy came within 30 meters, then fired and vanished. For a brief, brutal moment, the balance of power shifted back to the man in the rubble, but it was a desperate weapon for a desperate army. Its range was short, its blast deadly to anyone too close, and its operators rarely survived long enough to reload. Still, it terrified tank crews who knew that every corner, every window, could hide a man with a single shot capable of ending them. After the war, the concept lived on, copied, refined, and reborn as the bazooka and RPG. The Panzerfaust was crude, simple, and lethal, the prototype for modern infantry anti-tank weapons. It gave one soldier one chance, and for many, that was enough. Number 8. Lee Enfield No. 4, Mark I, the rifle that never quit. When the war began, the British soldier still carried a design born before the last one ended. The Lee Enfield had fought through the trenches of 1914, and by 1939, many thought it was obsolete. Then it proved everyone wrong. The updated No. 4 Mk1 took everything good about the old rifle: speed, accuracy, reliability, and made it better. Its bolt action was the smoothest in the world, allowing a trained marksman to fire 10 aimed rounds in under 20 seconds. German troops joked that every British platoon must have had machine guns. They were hearing Enfields. It fired the heavy .303 cartridge, hit hard, and held 10 rounds, twice the capacity of most other bolt actions of the war. In the mud of Flanders, the heat of North Africa, and the jungles of Burma, the Enfield kept working when newer designs failed. It was easy to strip, easy to repair, and could be trusted by any man who carried it. The rifle's accuracy made it a sniper's favorite, its dependability a commander's comfort. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't new, but it was relentless. The perfect soldier's rifle for a nation that refused to give in. When newer weapons came and went, the Enfield stayed. It served into Korea, into the colonies, and long after the empire that built it had faded away. In a century of changing wars, one rifle never changed sides. The Lee Enfield didn't just survive history, it outlived it. If you're still watching, you're exactly the kind of person this channel's built for, the ones who want the truth, not the movie version. So while we dive into the top 7, make sure you're subscribed. There's a whole world of forgotten weapons and battlefield stories coming next, and you won't want to miss what's still ahead. Number 7. Mosin Nagant 9130, the rifle of the Eastern Front. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't refined, but in the frozen chaos of the Eastern Front, elegance didn't matter. Survival did. The Mosin Nagant 9130 was the Soviet Union's answer to a brutal equation: arm millions of men, fast, and keep them fighting through a winter that could kill faster than bullets. It was long, heavy, and rough around the edges. The bolt was stiff, the trigger unpredictable, and yet it worked. In snow, in mud, in blood. Factories turned them out by the millions. Whole divisions carried nothing else. It became less a weapon and more a symbol, the rifle of the Red Army and the sound of the Soviet advance. The Mosin didn't just arm soldiers, it armed legends. Snipers like Vasily Zaitsev and Lyudmila Pavlichenko turned it into an icon of precision and patience, proving that skill could turn a mass-produced tool into an instrument of history. It wasn't the fastest rifle, it wasn't the most modern, but it did what the Red Army needed. It fired, it endured, and it kept firing long after its user should have been dead. When the war ended, the Mosin Nagant didn't disappear. It spread across revolutions, resistance movements, and proxy wars for decades to come. It was crude, it was simple, and it was unstoppable. The Mosin Nagant wasn't just the rifle of the Eastern Front, it was the rifle of endurance itself. Number 6, PPSh-41, the burp gun that broke the lines. On the Eastern Front, combat was close, fast, and merciless. The Soviets needed a weapon that could match the pace of street fighting in Stalingrad and the charge of infantry through ruined cities. They found it in the PPSh-41. Nicknamed the burp gun for its furious, buzzing rate of fire, it spat out 900 rounds a minute from a drum that held 71. It was cheap, simple, and built from stamped steel, designed to be made by the thousands in small workshops as much as in major arsenals. For Soviet troops, it was more than a gun, it was a lifeline. In close quarters combat, a man with a PPSh could overwhelm whole squads before they knew what hit them. Its controllable recoil and high capacity turned untrained conscripts into a wall of fire. The weapon spread quickly. Entire divisions were equipped with it. Captured versions were prized by German troops who knew how devastating it could be in city fighting. It became the sound of the Red Army's advance, relentless, mechanical, and unstoppable. The PPSh-41 wasn't precise, it wasn't elegant, but it didn't need to be. It was built for one purpose: to clear the way. By war's end, over 5 million had been made, and its design would inspire generations of submachine guns that followed. It was the roar of Soviet industry made flesh, the weapon that turned factories into firepower and broke the lines one street at a time. Number 5. Karabiner 98K, the rifle of the Wehrmacht. For the German soldier, the Karabiner 98K was more than a rifle. It was a companion from the first day of training to the last shot of the war. Adopted in 1935, the Karbiner Kurz, or short carbine, was the final evolution of a design that had served Germany since the 1890s. It was simple, strong, and built with the precision of a machine tool, a bolt-action rifle perfected for discipline and accuracy. The 98K fired the 7.92mm Mauser cartridge, flat-shooting and powerful. In the hands of a trained marksman, it could hit targets hundreds of meters away with deadly reliability. It was rugged enough to survive Russian winters, North African sand, and the ruins of Europe, and it looked every bit the part. German doctrine centered around it. The rifleman's steady fire supported the squad's machine gun, and the 98K's precision made it the natural choice for snipers. Each one came with a story, names carved into stocks, notches filed into bolts, oil darkened by sweat and dirt. But by 1944, the Karabiner 98K was already a relic of an older war. While the Allies issued semi-automatics, German troops were still working a bolt. In sheer numbers and reliability, it never faltered, but in innovation, it was being left behind. Still, when soldiers remembered the war, they remembered the 98K. It was the rifle that defined the Wehrmacht, efficient, unyielding, and built for a kind of perfection that couldn't survive the modern battlefield. For Germany's army, the Karabiner 98K wasn't just a weapon, it was an identity, forged in steel and carried to the end. Number 4. MG-42, Hitler's buzzsaw. Every army in World War II had a machine gun. Germany had the machine gun. The MG-42 was born from a single goal: to build the fastest, most reliable automatic weapon on Earth. It succeeded almost too well. Firing at over 1,200 rounds per minute, its sound became a legend, a harsh, metallic roar that Allied soldiers nicknamed Hitler's buzzsaw. Entire platoons froze the first time they heard it. The noise wasn't just fearsome, it was psychological warfare. The gun's design was as revolutionary as its fire rate. It used stamped metal parts instead of machined steel, which meant it could be built quickly and cheaply without losing precision. Its quick-change barrel system let gunners swap out overheated barrels in seconds, keeping up a wall of fire that could pin whole companies. The MG-42 redefined how infantry fought. German squads were built around their machine gun teams, not the other way around. Every rifleman existed to support the gun, feed it, protect it, and move it forward. It was reliable in the desert, the snow, the forest, and the city. If you could hear an MG-42, you were already in its range. After the war, its influence didn't end. The American M60, the Belgian MAG, even the modern German MG3, all trace their lineage back to this weapon. The MG-42 wasn't just a tool of war, it was an evolution in human firepower, a machine so fast, so efficient, that its echo still shapes the sound of battle today. Number 3. STG-44, the first assault rifle. By 1943, Germany faced a new kind of war. The days of long-range marksmanship were fading. Battles were fought in towns, forests, and ruins, where range mattered less than speed and firepower had to move with the man carrying it. The STG-44 was the answer. Its name stood for Sturmgewehr, storm rifle. It was the first weapon to blend the accuracy of a rifle with the automatic fire of a submachine gun. It fired a new cartridge, smaller than the Mausers, but powerful enough for 300 meters, the perfect balance between control and reach. For the first time, one soldier could fight effectively at any distance. That idea, the concept of the assault rifle, would change warfare forever. The STG-44's impact wasn't measured in how many were built, but in what came after. Its layout, pistol grip, curved magazine, intermediate cartridge, became the blueprint for every modern infantry rifle. The AK-47, the M16, the G36, all trace their design back to this gun. But in 1944, it arrived too late to save the army that built it. Production was slow, supplies collapsing, and Germany was already losing the war it had helped redefine. Yet even in defeat, the STG-44 planted the seed of a new era. It was the rifle that bridged 2 centuries, born in desperation and destined to arm the world. The STG-44 didn't just change World War II, it changed every war that came after. Number 2. M1 Garand, the rifle that won the war. General George S. Patton called it the greatest battle implement ever devised. He wasn't exaggerating. When most of the world's soldiers still worked a bolt between every shot, the Americans went to war with a rifle that fired as fast as you could pull the trigger. The M1 Garand gave every U.S. infantryman the firepower of 2. It fired the powerful .30-06 cartridge from an 8-round clip that ejected with a sharp metallic ping, a sound every veteran remembered. Reliable, accurate, and rugged, it worked in snow, sand, and salt water. Troops trusted it completely. The Garand changed how the Allies fought. Squads no longer advanced cautiously behind machine guns. They were the firepower. A line of riflemen armed with M1s could lay down a storm of lead that overwhelmed enemies still cycling bolts. It was heavy, yes, and reloading under fire took practice, but once you had it in your hands, you never wanted to go back. Across Europe and the Pacific, its bark echoed through forests, jungles, and city streets, the sound of Allied momentum. After the war, it stayed in service across the globe, training generations of soldiers and inspiring designs for decades. The M1 Garand didn't just win battles, it redefined what a standard rifle could be. reliable, semi-automatic, and unstoppable in the hands of a determined soldier. For the men who carried it, it wasn't just a weapon. It was confidence made of steel. Number 1. AK prototype, the weapon the war left behind. When the guns of World War II finally fell silent, one more was being born. In the ruins of Europe, the lessons of every rifle, carbine, and machine gun came together in the hands of a young Soviet tank sergeant named Mikhail Kalashnikov. He had been wounded in battle, and while recovering, he began sketching an idea. A rifle that could do what no weapon had yet done: combine simplicity, reliability, and firepower in one design. What emerged was the direct heir to the war that had just ended. The Germans had proven the concept with the STG-44, the world's first true assault rifle. The Americans had perfected mass production with the Garand. Kalashnikov took both ideas, stripped them to their essence, and built something new. The first AK prototype appeared in 1946, rugged, gas-operated, and brutally efficient. It fired the same kind of intermediate cartridge the STG-44 had pioneered, but it could survive mud, snow, and neglect. It didn't need precision machining, it just needed to work, anywhere, for anyone. Within a few years, it armed half the world. Guerrillas, soldiers, and revolutionaries carried it from Asia to Africa. It became more than a weapon. It became an idea that one man with one rifle could change the fate of nations. The AK wasn't born during World War II, but it was forged entirely by it. Every innovation, every failure, every lesson from that conflict led to this design. The war ended in 1945, but its final shot, echoed in the click of a safety lever on an AK, has never really stopped. The Second World War ended 80 years ago, but the weapons it created never truly disappeared. From the bolt actions of the trenches to the assault rifles that followed, every trigger, every design, every spent casing tells the same story. Human innovation born in the shadow of fear. These 15 guns didn't just fight battles. They defined how wars would be fought for the rest of the century. Each one a reflection of the men who carried it, tired, cold, and determined to see another sunrise. Some became legends, others faded into museums and memories, but together they changed history, one shot at a time. If you've made it this far, you already know. History isn't just dates and maps. It's the tools, the hands, and the choices that shape the world we live in. So if you want to keep uncovering the weapons, machines, and moments that defined our past, subscribe and stay locked in. Because the next story might just change how you see war and the world forever.